welcome to another interesting session of the Economic Times Cutting Chai Stories. Today, we are going to be talking to Ganesh Ramachandran, who's a CIO for Alchem. You know the format. We sit down with a CIO and go into a 360-degree investigation of their personal life, their professional life, and what really makes them tick. So, I'm going to get started with my first question for Ganesh. First of all, Ganesh, welcome.
Thank you so much, Jesse, and thanks for having me here.
You're most welcome, and I hope you will thank me at the end when I finish grilling you as well. um, so, tell us something about what makes you tick. What are you really passionate about?
So, to some extent, I have a bit of an OCD, I believe. So that makes me tick. I do like to see things going well, like to put things in order. Perhaps it also is both the education background of being an engineer and the 20 years I spent in consulting, where work largely around operational strategy, trying to help people get things better at the organization level. So that I guess plays out on the personal side as well quite strongly. Uh, Very used to having an orderly kind of thing going along, and don't enjoy ambiguity as much. All of which got changed with marriage, though dramatically. So, wifey is a complete opposite, and learned also how to start handling things and taking things as they come. So, I think what makes me tick currently is largely things on the family side, just making sure that you're able to spend as much time outside of work as well as you are at work. And that's one of the things I learned very early in my career of working hard and playing even harder. So I think just making sure you have a right balance between both enjoying life, taking it as it comes, is something that I've started learning to do.
You talked a little bit about how you bring this balance with music. Is that a hobby or something you look to pursue passionately going forward?
So it's more of a hobby currently. One of my biggest regrets is I never learned music formally. Was more interested in playing cricket as a child than going for music classes, though my parents tried very hard. But now with my son, that's something that has been growing big time. He's into music completely. He's formally trained in Hindustani, Carnatic, and Western classical. So got a wide exposure to music right across, and he's been learning from the age of 5. He's about 19 now, so he's been learning for the last 14 years. And along with that, you've got to start hearing a lot more on the music side. So I do sing. I enjoy singing, and some of the companies that I've worked with have been very kind to afford me the opportunity to explore my talent. So a lot, one of the companies that I worked with gave us a stage to perform at Sydney, where the next day there was Lionel Richie who was coming and performing. So was really nice to be performing on big stages like those where you just got to see the audience, the lights were on you, and great fun. So apart from singing and performing at college and so on, and then just losing it for about a decade in between, just getting back to it has been something very, very nice. And that's still something I would like to do. So I see my son trains at one of the music institutes where I see a lot of the older people as well coming in, and people who are, who are professionals, who are probably retired as well, coming and learning music. So that's still something I believe I'll do at some point in time.
Okay, so not bad. Now your LinkedIn should be updated saying opening act for Lionel Richie.
Of
Uh,
course.
I didn't see that. So you talked about how you were also in consulting earlier, and now you are in the CIO role. So what's been the journey like? I mean, what got you to the CIO office?
It's actually quite interesting. So even if you'd asked me about 3 years ago, I would probably said CIO me, no, not really. Uh, and it's more because if you look at my career graph, I started with sales. I sold you know flavored drinks, carbonated beverage drinks, and then moved across to marketing credit cards. Then went into consulting, learned the process consulting first, then started selling consulting services and running a P&L. So it's been a varied exposure that I've had, and I think the great part is just being able to pivot and keep learning new things continually. And I think that's something which has always been very, very interesting. So when this kind of came up, I really wasn't very sure. And when I did my first move into Wipro about 2 decades ago, I used to continually feel that I'm probably in the wrong place because I'm not a technologist and am I really fitting in over there? But that probably was one of the best learnings that I've had because it exposed you to so many new things. Wipro gave you an opportunity to kind of explore yourself, grow beyond what you were doing, and provided that canvas, which was really very, very nice. And I think that stood me in great stead because it gave you the confidence that you could try out new things. And at the end of it, what you really were looking to do was align with the business and make sure that you had whatever you're doing, whether it's a process fix you're trying to put in, or a people side you were trying to work on, or the technology side you were trying to fit, just make sure that you have the business objective really being met. And I think that has been the guiding light that I've really gone and worked with right across. And if I look at my consulting career itself, it's spanned right across. So I started process consulting, moved into a little bit of technology consulting, did a bit of people consulting as well. So I'm a certified strengths coach. I learned about employee engagement and how to work around working with strengths. That was really fascinating. And still, one of the areas which I really enjoy is behavioral economics and what turns people on and how emotions are the ones that really drive us rather than the things that we'd like to believe that we are rational human beings. So I think what got me around over here is a mix of all of these, which led me to believe that you have an opportunity to really build and drive out a transformation, which I used to preach as a consultant. And I'm having the opportunity to not just work and do it as a third party when you were a consultant, but actually get in over here and drive that transformation across for the organization that's growing and scaling really fast and is one of the fastest growing companies in India today.
Yeah, nice to hear that you like behavioral economics. That's actually one of my favorite topics as well.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, whether it's free economics or Dan Ariely, Daniel Pink.
And
Um,
Kevin,
yeah, because finally, I think every business is understanding what motivates people, and that's very interesting. And um, you talked a bit about your journey, and what advice would you give someone who wants to be a CIO?
so I really think, and especially that's something that COVID has really kind of brought out even more, I believe, currently. It's not about technology. I think it's really about making sure to work collaboratively as a CIO, or I'd argue any business leader, and make sure that you align to what the business goals are. So the biggest advice that I have for a person who's budding to be a CIO is to be curious, to continually keep being an inquirer and find out what the requirements are and work towards those and be ready to keep changing very rapidly because many times you think the requirements are something and as you go along you figure that, oh, it's not what it was. I need to pivot 180 degrees and go in a completely different path. And that's absolutely all right. When you have requirements that are changing, when you have landscapes that are evolving, when you have technology that is coming up, which is completely different from what it was even 3 years ago. So I genuinely believe that that's what one should really be looking at the current time and work with that a flexible, scalable model to kind of take it along. And of course, have as much as you can dabble into technology and learn about new things, get along with it. So whether it is cyber, whether it is learning the new things about AI, ML, IoTs, all the acronyms that you can think of, pick up most of those along the way. I think that really helps.
So you talked a lot about alignment with business, and I would imagine that you work pretty closely with the CEO in that case. So I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you for your best and your worst dialogues with a CEO. You don't have to name the CEO.
Of course, I wouldn't commit
You
harakiri
want
there.
to, you can.
So the best has been where at Wipro, one of the CEOs had mentioned that don't focus about your employment, focus about your employability. I think that is something that really stuck on. And I think it's true for anyone and everyone who's working, irrespective of what field you are. I think skills are changing so dramatically. Things are coming up so rapidly that as long as you continue to stay that focus and you are passionate about what you're doing, you never would really bother about whether I have a job left with me because you'll anyway be relevant in the marketplace. So that's been something that I thought was quite awesome. Something that I didn't really like, and it's not a quote, but CEOs who look out only for themselves and not for the team below. I think are ones that I've really never gotten along with, and I left those places pretty quickly. Because it just doesn't gel with my value system. Where I believe as a leader, what you're looking at is making sure that you are there for the team as well, and you're there to back them up when they need you. So that trust that you need to be able to imbibe in your team is something that I think every leader should be doing, irrespective of which area you're in.
So let me switch tracks a bit and ask you, if you were CIO of India, what would you do?
So I think there's plenty that one can do. I think starting from absolute basic citizen services that one provides, and to be fair, the government of India has done a lot of things on the e-governance tracks. I've had the opportunity to work closely with the governments on some of the government consulting projects, and it's been a phenomenal learning. I got in completely apprehensive, saying, "Is this even an area that one would want to kind of get into?" Because your vision of what government and the whole consulting was a state organization that really kind of went very slowly and did executed changes. But my whole perception changed when I worked closely with them. And I think while the national e-governance plan and the way government has gone with the whole digital path has been very, very nice, I think the places which a CIO for India could really help is on driving a lot of the execution elements. I think many of the policies that the government brings out are very well thought of. They have good things that are there. But where it really starts coming apart is, and given a country as diverse as India and the whole cultural aspects that we have, I think the place where it really struggles is the execution aspects. So what I would love to do if I were the CIO is to make sure that you had strong measurable areas that people could track, see where things are going all right, have early warning signals which could be picked up where things are not going all right, which technology can provide and serve as a lamppost and a guiding light to ensure that people are able to get to the right place of what that whole change should drive for people. And it's across the kind of things they look at, whether you look at complex changes like GST that the government has brought about, whether you look at areas of the whole citizen services which the government is doing. I mean, we still have a lot of complexity in the way it is driven, right? If I have got a driving license in a particular state, if I move out to another state, I really am, I struggle to get back a license because I need to go back to that state still to kind of drive it. I remember when we were doing the crime and criminal network tracking system a few years ago, I was shocked to realize that we never had a way by which you could track people across the country. And we are talking of the same country here. So, while I think the CIO's role for the government of India would be absolutely fascinating, just because of the kind of diversity that we have and the way in which this federated structure of the way we are built, right, where each state drives a separate bunch of things given their ground situation over there. So as a CIO for India, I think one of the big things that would be great to kind of drive is make sure that you have, and what people keep complaining a lot of the time saying, the accountability is not there. So can we have tracking mechanisms in place which can help people in not just saying that I'm accountable, but also show people the success that we have been able to drive through initiatives. And very, very clearly, I do think many initiatives are extremely successful, which the government has managed to drive. Simple examples of Aadhaar, which was there, the direct benefit transfer the government has driven, I think are absolutely fascinating examples as a part of that.
Yeah, actually, I mean, I think you'd make a pretty good CIO for India, and maybe this gig is going to lead to that someday. A slightly related question: what kind of changes would you want to bring in society using technology?
So I really believe that one of the things that as we get more connected, I think there's also a place where we become less connected in terms of the way we are and the closeness that is there. You see it in multiple facets of trolling that happens, of teenage kids. You see mental issues that are kind of growing. Uh, and I think a lot of it is just because we really don't understand each other or sit and take the time to talk to people as much as we would like. So while we do have technology platforms that supposedly help people come closer together, uh, a way by which we could actually kind of enable that and have things coming through would be fantastic. I don't believe it's just technology alone. I think it'll be like you have in the normal way. It's a mix of both physical and digital. So, for instance, there are one of my passions is really kind of going across and conducting guest lectures to share knowledge, whether it is at institutes or with people who are not as privileged. And it could be for as simple things as how to ace interviews, to how do you make yourself presentable, how do you build your personal brand, starting from as simple things as that to going on to things of more technical aspects on saying what are some of the things you look at when you drive an operational strategy, how do you really kind of drive change across, how do you build on your strengths. I think all of these, if there's a way by which you can build the technology to come into it, uh, and have a way by which people can see where they are and track how they really are going towards what they want to be and help people maximize their potential. I really think that would be something which would be so cool because in today's age and time, if we can all perform to our potential, I mean, as a society, I think we would just be somewhere else. And
That's
in
actually
particular,
very
given
good.
the kind of you know human capital that we've got.
So, what would you be if you weren't a CIO?
I'd love to be an entertainer, perhaps love to sing. Also, love to kind of, the big thing which I would really love to have done is actually gone and spent time in a kindergarten. I loved being with children, and I really believe children are the closest thing you can find to whether you call it God or something else, because they just have no hidden agenda and they're just completely open. So spending time with children is something which I really enjoy. And I used to, my wife actually had moved away from her corporate career to teaching speech and drama. And so when she was doing that is when we both realized how much we thoroughly enjoyed going in and doing some of those things with kids across. And even now, typically when we go for any family functions, more than meeting the others, I so look forward to seeing the little ones around and just spending time with them. It's an absolute delight.
So, is that going to happen soon? What are your long-term personal goals?
So, a couple of them. So, aligned back with the teaching areas, working along with the younger children and helping them actually kind of reach what they would like to. And we've done it for our, I think the biggest place we've tried is with our own son. So, we are a traditional Orthodox middle class Indian family. And when we figured that our son Anish was more into music and he was keen to explore that side of it, I had to put aside my traditional South Indian mentality of saying, be an engineer, be a CA, and get across to trying something different. So we've allowed him to kind of explore his talents. And I really believe that, if we could get people to kind of work on that and get people to go on the paths which they really enjoy doing and play to their strengths, it would really help in getting them to be a lot more happy and lead a fulfilling life. And I think the earlier you're able to kind of hone those or identify those the areas which people are interested in, it really helps. I've seen people going through a lifetime without knowing what you really want to do or what you like to do. And it seems such a shame. We have one life, and the more you can make out of it, the better it is, I would guess.
Well, I think you've kind of covered a bit of it, but like, how do you want to be seen? What would you like your legacy to be?
I think it's very simple as that here's a guy who was there for us when we needed him, whether it's at work or whether on the family side. That's about what I think would be the best thing to kind of have. Uh, and I think that's what you'd like to be remembered for, wouldn't you? Where people talk about you even when you're not there. I don't think greatness necessarily is that you were a great leader, whichever one you kind of look at. But I think those small, simple things that you could do for people in your daily life, whether it is in your family or as a manager or as a leader, I think goes a long way in making sure that people talk about you and remember you. And some of those are very nice to know when you have your teams of 20 years ago still kind of getting in touch and saying, hey, we've had kind of had those conversations that time, and I learned something from there. And I've learned a lot from some of my managers that I worked with and some of my mentors and guides. So would love to have that kind of opportunity to pass it back.
So, who's the person who's always there for you? The friendly, unjudgy ear you rely on?
I probably, I'm not sure if I'm going to be an exception, but genuinely, I think it's my wife and son. I think they are the closest that I see to, and people who I really have, who don't mind telling me in my face that, hey, this is not okay. And my son's probably my biggest critic. I'm scared to sing in front of him. One, because he's a trained voice, and second, he has those, you're a little pitchy here, you're a little this off there. And the same way when it comes to office calls, especially more so now when you're taking calls from home and so on, I think they know pretty much everyone on my team and the other teams that I talk to. And they're like, with this guy, you probably need not have said these kind of things. You probably were a little too judgmental when you were here. I'm like, okay, so I've actually realized a lot more that you kind of can learn a lot of your blind spots from some of the people who are closer to you. I earlier used to think that that was not the case, but the last 9 months or so has really led me to believe that there's a lot more that you can do just having people who are close to you, show you a mirror and in a nice way. So, and particularly, I think that when it comes from them, the acceptance is a lot higher, at least for me. So that's really where I would see as the people who are the closest to me, kind of being my biggest sounding boards as well.
So it's kind of like a continual coaching program at home.
Oh, you bet. You bet. Though it
So,
goes both ways, it goes both ways too.
yeah, of course. So my last question for you is, what advice would you give your 25-year-old self?
I really would think my 25-year-old self needs to just be a little more confident about himself, uh, be open to sharing his mind a little more, and not hesitate to speak out his thoughts. Apart from that, I think my 25-year-old was fairly all right. Uh, was quite mature even at that time. Was fairly okay with doing things, but was perhaps a little more timid than what needed to be there. And it perhaps also came from the fact of having been more in a hierarchical kind of a society and coming from a more different background. But if I see my son, who's in 5 years going to be 25, I think that's probably where I would see him kind of being. And I genuinely believe that as long as you keep doing what you like to do and wake up every day charged up to go and do whatever you're doing, uh, you really would be in a place where, as a 25-year-old or as a person who's in his sunset years, still enjoy life as much as you would. So the biggest, one of the biggest lessons I learned was my wife's granddad. When we got married, he must have been about in his late 70s, and the internet had just started becoming more popular at that time. So he ensured that he made me take him through what the internet was. I worked through all of that. I was working with a bank at that point. So he got me to take him to an ATM and said, there's some machine from which notes come out. So I would like to see that. And just the joie de vivre on that, right? Just making sure that you are staying alive, wanting to explore new things, wanting to just see what all those cool things coming out, and just having that happiness and things that you could learn from all those new things that are out there and not be scared of them is, I think, what people across ages, whether you're young or old, should be looking at.
Fantastic talking to you. And I think the final takeaway for me is, don't be scared of new things. And that seems to have kind of guided your career as well.
Of course.
So thanks so much, Ganesh. And with this, we wrap our session of Cutting Chai Stories. This is Jessie Paul signing off.